So Ron, what'd you do here?
So what we're trying to do is reduce the brightness, increase the contrast, because you can't really see them in the vehicle there. So we're going to have to try to expand it, zoom into it digitally, so we can get a clearer picture.
Wow.
No, that's the driver. What's her name again?
Danny Joe.
That's
Danny Joe, and it looks like she's got two hands on the steering wheel.
On Sunday, September 25th, 2016, Tex McIver spent the day golfing with his wife, Diane. Afterwards, they went back to their ranch home in Putnam County, where Diane's friend Danny Joe Carter was spending the weekend with them. At the end of the day, all three headed back to Atlanta in the McIver's SUV. Danny Joe was driving because Diane and Tex had been drinking wine. Diane was in the front passenger seat and Tex was in the back seat. When they got to downtown Atlanta on the connector, they hit traffic, so they took the Edgewood exit. As they got off the road, Tex was concerned about the neighborhood they were in, so he asked Diane to hand him his gun from the console. They continued driving up Piedmont Road, and somewhere between 12th and 14th Street, the gun went off. The bullet traveled through the front passenger seat and struck Diane. She died the next day at the hospital. Tex McIver says it was an accident, but prosecutors say it's murder. This is the trial of Tex McIver.
There's really one thing that you need to know about Tex McIver and Diane McIver to know that he did not intentionally shoot his wife, and that is that he loved her.
On Diane's death, he went from negative $5,000 to over $1.1 million cash instantly. And he was the executor and one of the beneficiaries of Diane's $7 million estate. It was aimed right at her back.
He's falling asleep. When they get back in my park, the gun just discharges and goes off.
And she's driving as fast as she could. And she says the defendant tells her, slow down. You can get this case dismissed. And if you do, there's a large bonus in it for you. And I won't mind if you share it with the DA.
You said she made loans to the defendant, Mr.
Yes.
McIver. And did she expect Mr. McIver to pay her on time with interest?
His loan was interest only, so he only paid interest.
Okay.
He didn't pay any principal.
Now, you said his loan. Tell the jury a little bit about his loan and what the loan was for.
The loan was for $350,000. I'm not sure what the loan was, what the money was given to him for. It started January 15th of 2012, and he made interest-only payments. It was a 3-year term originally, and the payments were $1,531 a month. And at the end of the 3 years, Diane came to me. It was January, I guess, the 15th, to say, I've re-upped the loan for another 3 years, and I've reduced his payment to $1,400 and something dollars. It wouldn't be in the checkbook registers. It was a whole, I had a file for each person that had a loan out, and each month it had the amount of the payment, and then I posted the payments as they were being made.
Okay.
So there is a spreadsheet for that someplace.
The loan was for $350K?
Yes.
And it was how many years?
The original was 3.
Okay. And that started when?
January 15th. The payment was due on the 18th of the month, and it started in January. I think it was 2012.
And it was 3 years from there?
Yeah, it was $1,500 and some change a month. My partner is interior designer, and the condo, the second condo, when they put them together, the kitchen was torn out. It was just a big party with a bedroom. And Tex had asked us what we thought it would cost to put that condo back as a condo if he wanted to put them on the market.
When you say put that back, you split them back up into 2 condos?
Right, and you have to put the kitchen back in and put it back together.
And sell them separately?
Yes.
And this was less than 24 hours after Ms. McIver was shot?
I read Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. It was one of those 3 nights.
That sounds like a funny question. Take a minute.
Brian. I'll be all right. It's what my job was, and that's how I saw it. It was very important to me to finish.
Just take a minute, take a deep breath.
I didn't think it would be this hour. It's been too long. Okay. So that's why it was important to me to finish her life.
Because her money was so important to them.
It wasn't.
I'm sorry, your objection.
Stop doing that. Don't argue through the questions. Save that for, if you want to get closely and negotiate with Mr. Butler at this conference.
Did he, after showing him your documents, your spreadsheets, did he say anything about her finances?
He thought she had more money than what she had. He was surprised at the number that was in her checking accounts.
Tex started saying, girls, I wish you hadn't gotten off here. This is a bad idea. This is a bad area. You should have just stayed on 85. We continued driving down here, and this light was red. Tex asked Diane, he said, darling, would you hand me my gun?
Who actually opened the console so that the gun could come out?
Diane did. As she was looking, Tex said, it's in the bag, and so she just reached over and got it, and I'm sitting here with both of my hands on and shut the console and handed it to him.
And when you were at the red light, can you tell the jurors what happened?
Well, we were sitting at the light, and I hear click, click, click. And I looked at Diane and asked her what she was doing. She said, I'm just making sure the door's locked. And at the light, and I hear click, click, click. And I looked at Diane and asked her what she was doing. She said, I'm just...
On Sunday, September 25th, 2016, Tex McIver spent the day golfing with his wife, Diane. Afterwards, they went back to their ranch home in Putnam County, where Diane's friend Danny Jo Carter was spending the weekend with them. At the end of the day, all three headed back to Atlanta in the McIver's SUV. Danny Jo was driving because Diane and Tex had been drinking wine. Diane was in the front passenger seat and Tex was in the back seat. When they got to downtown Atlanta on the connector, they hit traffic, so they took the Edgewood exit. As they got off the road, Tex was concerned about the neighborhood they were in, so he asked Diane to hand him his gun from the console. They continued driving up Piedmont Road, and somewhere between 12th and 14th Street, the gun went off. The bullet traveled through the front passenger seat and struck Diane. She died the next day at the hospital. Tex McIver says it was an accident, but prosecutors say it's murder. This is the trial of Tex McIver.
There's really one thing that you need to know about Tex McIver and Diane McIver to know that he did not intentionally shoot his wife, and that is that he loved her.
On Diane's death, he went from negative $5,000 to over $1.1 million cash instantly. And he was the executor and one of the beneficiaries of Diane's $7 million estate. It was aimed right at her back.
He's falling asleep. When they get back in my park, the gun just discharges and goes off.
And she's driving as fast as she could. And she says the defendant tells her, slow down. You can get this case dismissed. And if you do, there's a large bonus in it for you. And I won't mind if you share it with the DA.
You said she made loans to the defendant, Mr.
Yes.
McIver. And did she expect Mr. McIver to pay her on time with interest?
His loan was interest only, so he only paid interest.
Okay.
He didn't pay any principal.
Now, you said his loan. Tell the jury a little bit about his loan and what the loan was for.
The loan was for $350,000. I'm not sure what the loan was, what the money was given to him for. It started January 15th of 2012, and he made interest-only payments. It was a 3-year term originally, and the payments were $1,531 a month. And at the end of the 3 years, Diane came to me. It was January, I guess, the 15th, to say, I've re-upped the loan for another 3 years, and I've reduced his payment to $1,400 and something. It wouldn't be in the checkbook registers, it was a whole, I had a file for each person that had a loan out, and each month it had the amount of the payment, and then I posted the payments as they were being made.
Okay.
So there is a spreadsheet for that someplace.
The loan was for $350K?
Yes.
And it was how many years?
The original was 3.
Okay. And that started when?
January 15th. The payment was due on the 18th of the month, and it started in January, I think it was 2012.
And it was 3 years from there?
Yeah, and it was $1,500 and some change a month. My partner is interior designer, and the condo, the second condo, when they put them together, the kitchen was torn out. It was just a big party with a bedroom. And Tex had asked us what we thought it would cost to put that condo back as a condo, if he wanted to put them on the market.
When you say put that back, you mean split them back up into 2 condos?
Right, and you'd have to put the kitchen back in, and put it back together.
And sell them separately?
Yes.
And this was less than 24 hours after Ms. McIver
It was, I read it Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. It was one of those 3 nights.
That sounds like a funny question. Take a minute.
Do you need a break, Mr. Brown?
I'll be all right. It's what my job was, and that's how I saw it. It was very important to me to finish.
Just take a minute, take a deep breath.
And figure it would be this hour. Okay. So that's why. It was important to me to finish her life.
Because her money was so important to them.
It wasn't.
I'm sorry, your objection.
Stop doing that. Don't argue through the questions. Save that for, if you want to get closely and negotiate with Mr. Rucker at this conference.
Did he, after showing him your documents, your spreadsheets, did he say anything about her finances?
He thought she had more money than what she had. He was surprised at the number that was in her checking accounts.
Tex started saying, girls, I wish you hadn't gotten off here. This is a bad idea. This is a bad area. You should have just stayed on 85. We continued driving down here, and this light was red. Tex asked Diane, he said, darling, would you hand me my gun?
Who actually opened the console so that the gun could come out?
Diane did. As she was looking, Tex said, it's in the bag, and so she just reached over and got it, and I'm sitting here with both of my hands on, and shut the console and handed it to him.
And when you were at the red light, can you tell the jurors what happened?
Well, we were sitting at the light, and I hear click, 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 and I looked at Diane and asked her what she was doing. She said, I'm just making sure the door's locked. And I heard a big boom, and I didn't know what it was. I thought there was an explosion somewhere, and I saw a puff of smoke, and I could see his hand, and I could see the top of the gun, I could see part of the gun, his hands, and some of the bag.
And what happened next?
She said, Tex, she shot me.
Did he say anything?
No, I thought it was a joke, and then I realized it wasn't. And then I knew that I had to get to the nearest emergency room. I asked Tex where the closest emergency room was. He said, Emery, I wanted to panic, but I knew that I couldn't. She was breathing really hard and, kind of like panicky. He leaned forward and was holding her head with both hands and was saying, Diane, Diane. At one point he said, she's still breathing. I pulled in, there were some vehicles that were there in front of us, and Tex got out of the car. He had yelled for a gurney and didn't look at me, but looked past me and said, Danny Joe, I hate to see you get wrapped up in this. I've seen how these things can go down. You just need to say you came down here as a friend of the family.
When I entered the room after I had spoken to her husband, she was starting to ask questions. She asked me if she was going to die.
Was that all the questions that she asked you?
Yeah, she just asked me. She looked at me and said, "Am I going to die?"
What did you hear Ms. McIver say?
I just heard it was an accident.
So Ron, what'd you do here?
So what we're trying to do is reduce the brightness, increase the contrast, because you can't really see them in the vehicle there. So we're going to have to try to
Put the chain of custody guy on.
All right, here we go.
All right, folks. Good evening and welcome. I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you aboard. This is Late Feed Law. We do it every night at 7:30. We're following right now the Tex McIver trial. He's accused of murdering his wife. He shot and killed her, but he says it was an accident. Prosecutors say no, it was murder. Today in the courtroom is all about guns and money. And what was Tex's financial situation? Was he better off before or after he shot and killed his wife? That question may have been answered today. May have been answered. We're going to break it all down. Want your comments. You're the 13th juror. Questions and comments are welcome. Let me welcome my legal dream team tonight. Prosecutor LaTonya Hines and former prosecutor defense attorney Daryl Cohen with us tonight. And here's who's watching. We've got Patrick and Kathy and Cindy, Cheryl, Marcia, Edna, Steve-O in the house, Rena and Gail and Claudette. How you doing, Claudette? I said Jennifer already, right? Linda and Rachel, Peter, Beth, Kathy, Gina. We'll get to your questions, your comments, and everything else. But I want to start with how the day ended. When prosecutors rolled into the courtroom, it was like they had just busted a drug kingpin or some gang. There were piles of guns in the courtroom that all belonged to Tex McIver. What about that? Just the impact of rolling out a pile of guns in a case where a lawyer is accused of shooting and killing his wife.
It was a wonderful and fantastic dramatic moment. And you want to know why? Because you have this idea that this guy is saying that he accidentally shot his wife and doesn't know anything about guns. And what was even better, the drop the mic moment, playing the WSB interview where he says, I don't really know a lot about guns. I'm not really into guns.
I'm really not a gun guy. I'm not a gun guy.
That's not what he said. He said, I'm not a gun guy. He didn't say he wasn't a guns guy.
Right.
But he didn't say he didn't know anything about it. I think it was momentous. It had impact, something the prosecution should have done opening day, in my view.
Yeah, and I guess a good time to do it if you've got to put on the witness stand, like lawyers yesterday, you got an accountant on the stand today. That's like death for a prosecutor, isn't it? Putting on witnesses like that?
Yeah, but they're expert witnesses and they're trying to get the information out there, but you're absolutely correct. At some point in time, if you're a juror, you might start snoozing. But I tell you what, they weren't snoozing today when all those guns came out there and you saw all of these guns. And it goes right back to this whole idea, it can't be an accident. How is it an accident?
That's just not true, Latonia. An accident has nothing to do with all of those guns. It makes him look bad. He deserves to look bad, but it can be an accident whether you are a gun freak, whether you've never shot a gun before, or whether you're the world's foremost
And that's
expert.
absolutely correct. But if you're going with the theory that the prosecution's putting out there, that's why it was impactful that they had all those guns out there, because it shows that he did not do this accidentally. He knows everything about a gun.
It doesn't show that at all. It shows that he lied when he said he's not a gun guy.
But what else did he lie about? It shows about his credibility.
Who knows? But it doesn't show that he did it intentionally. And the evidence at this point, in my view, clearly shows that it was an accident. It has nothing to do with intention.
Respectfully disagree. And
you have a right to be
wrong. And
wrong.
I'm going to respectfully disagree, and I'm going to tell you why I respectfully disagree. Because here's what the prosecution's put out there. You know what? It was all about opportunity. No one's saying at this point in time that when he got off on the Edgewood exit that he said, I'm going to kill Diane. But you know what? While he's got that gun, afterwards they're out there, he thinks of the opportunity. He is this man who's henpecked. He can't get any money without having to ask for this money from her. And all these things start going in his head, and he's got this gun here. It's like when you go on a hiking trip with somebody, right? With your spouse, and oh, wait a minute, I'm not happy with this person. Oh, they're looking over the edge. Oh, perfect opportunity. And you take it. And then it becomes...
Note to self, don't go hiking with Latonia.
But here's what happens, and this is why it's a perfect opportunity to do such a thing, because it becomes this debatable thing about whether or not it's accidental or not. And he's a bit narcissistic to think that maybe, you know what, I can get off with this.
All right. Claudia has a question for me. Vinny, please tell us what Tex said in those video snippets today. And then she mentioned some other website that is streaming the trial cut off the coverage. I'll tell you for sure what happened. And the first video snippet was what Latonia referenced, which is him saying, I'm not a gun guy, and they played that right after the jury saw this stockpile of guns inside the courtroom. The second one, and there was a second part to that snippet, which was consistent with the first snippet they showed from another station that interviewed Tex McIver, which was him saying that he was worth 2.5 times Diane's estate, which again is another lie, because what was clear today is that Diane was worth a whole lot more than he was. So basically these two video snippets were Tex McIver not telling the truth, telling a story. Is that a problem, Daryl? If he's telling the story to TV that was proven to be untrue, does it make his story that he was telling, or stories that he was telling about accidentally shooting, more likely to be untrue?
How many of us have watched a used car salesperson on TV? Bravado, bravado, bravado. I'm a male, she's a female, I'm in my mid-70s, there's no way that my wife can be worth more than me.
Right,
that's just something
when you have to compare...
When you're locked up for killing her?
Right, but when you have to compare what's going on with Tex McIver with the man who's selling a used car, to someone, that's a really bad situation for the defense. And here's what you can't isolate.
No offense to any car salespeople who happen to be watching tonight.
No offense whatsoever. But my point is, when somebody's selling a car, that's the point. They're trying to sell this car. But here's the issue that's happened that the defense has got to deal with. You can't isolate out all these little lies. Oh, everybody does this here. Everybody does this. No, not everybody does what's happened here. And that's part of the problem. And that's what the prosecution has looked at and making their decision to do the charges the way that they have.
Does it make it more difficult for the defense to sell his story? Because his story's in front of the jury, right? Because everyone has recounted, plus they showed the interrogation of him saying this was an accident. So if he's now down the road lying about his wealth, which he knows, he's smart, he knows that's what the potential motive is here. So if he's trying to get out there that, no, I've had no reason to kill her because I'm worth more than her. Isn't that what he's sort of saying by saying, I'm worth more money than her, which is a lie?
So I had no reason to do it. But on the other hand, no one yet, when the day is done, when the trial is over, and you look at the car seat, there's metal in between the fabric. And there's no way that you can convince me, or should, in my view, be able to convince jurors that he did it intentionally to kill her, unless you can show where he had seen a car seat before, taken it apart, and saw where.
So you're getting into the physical evidence. Let's just show the folks. Oh, it's not up there.
Absolutely.
I got it. Where is it, over here? I gotta find that. I've got that picture. I've got it here somewhere in my pile of pictures.
This is our pile of evidence.
I've got a pile of evidence. Where is where's exhibit? I'm like a lawyer in courtroom now trying to find this piece of evidence.
Find this piece of evidence Daryl's trying to shoot down.
It's been stolen.
I'm shooting nothing.
It's in here.
Is it in? It's definitely in here.
Yeah, because I was just looking at it.
I've got all the evidence here. I need a fill. Ah, here it is, Daryl.
There it is.
Exhibit. Can we mark this for? Okay, here we go. So zoom in here, and this is what Daryl's talking about, which is the seat with the back open, so you can see all the metal that is between where Diane was sitting, and this. So this is where she's sitting, and this is the back of the seat open, and the circle there is where the bullet goes through. So you got a lot of metal, a lot of parts in there, and that's what Daryl was referencing. I wanted to again go to these comments, and we're going to be taking a week off here. And who had the question about that? I don't know who wrote that, because they're going so fast, all the comments, I couldn't catch up to it. We want to know, is it unusual to take a week off? Let's talk about, is it unusual? Because at the end of this week, there are a lot of jurors and me going away for spring break, so they're going to stop the trial for a week, reconvene April 9th. Number one, is that unusual?
It is unusual, because normally when you start a trial, you want to keep momentum. And by the way, I think it's going to help the defense, because today, when all the guns were paraded, I think it's become more and more dull as a defense thinks about it, because people, as they're going away, they forget about it.
Do you think that this is going to help the defense this week off? Because it's going to be towards the end of the case, and might be like during the defense case or right before the defense case?
And here's the way I put it. It wouldn't matter whose side it is on, but when to have this big of a break, but especially for the prosecution, it's not good, because what happens is all this information that you got out there, when people are listening and everything, there's a week off, and they're not thinking about it. And you're going to have to try to hurry up and do a quick summary. Hey, when we last left, you know what I mean? And you're not going to end with a cliffhanger.
Put some pressure on the prosecution for the closing argument, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got
Well, you know what else
good summary.
You got a problem with jurors potentially seeing too much publicity about this. There's no way, in my view, that 12 men and women are going to be completely isolated during the week that they're off. Just not going to happen.
And it's so hard nowadays, especially with social media and things, for people to really be unplugged from a trial.
Yeah, I'm going through and getting all these pieces of paper. I got another one, another question. And who was it? Edna? Edna had the question, Vinny, can they find him guilty on a lesser charge? Well, to answer that question, I wanted to start first with the actual indictment, which I have in my hand here for you, Edna. And if you'll see, here's the first count, second count, third count. We've got a fourth count, fifth count, sixth count, 7 counts. So the top charge, obviously the one that we talk about all the time, is the malice murder or the felony murder.
Right.
The two big charges here, right? But there's 5 other charges. And if there's a jury compromise, or a jury says, you know what, this guy did something wrong, but maybe it's not murder,
as they call it.
There's an ability that they can find him guilty of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, influencing witnesses, again, and there's 3 counts of influencing witnesses, so that's one place they could go. Here's the big question, though. Is there going to be, do you think, a lesser included charge when the jury gets their jury form of involuntary manslaughter?
I think there are going to be 2 lesser included charges. Voluntary manslaughter and then involuntary manslaughter, which is really reckless conduct. I would be stunned if those 2 were not part of it when the judge charges the jury.
Now, who makes that decision, right? That's
to
prosecution and defense. If they don't agree, then the judge has to decide whether that happens, right?
He does, but I feel confident that the defense will ask for those to be included, and I can't imagine why the judge would not include it.
Okay. It seems to make sense to me, because there has been some evidence of that, right? If you're handling a gun recklessly, and in order to include that, there has to be some plausible argument or evidence that would support it.
Right, and I would have to think, though, as the prosecution, this really is not a slam dunk case. It's very circumstantial.
No, it's not.
you really need those lesser included charges. I think you need to have them.
Another good point here is that Claudia is making. Jurors saw Tex in the jail because those television interviews, one of which the photographer on was our own Joe Flo here when he was working for some other station. But anyway, right? That was you? You were there. Yes. And he was in jail, and it looked like it was pretty clear to the jury based upon how he was dressed. So how does that impact the trial? Well, the fact that the jury knows at some point he was locked up.
No, but that's not what's impactful. What's impactful is you're willing to give all these interviews and tell your side of the story. Are you going to do it for us here?
Oh, how about that,
That
Carol?
to me is probably more impactful than anything. Here you are. You want to get your story out and tell people what happened. And here you are doing an interview from the jail.
But you won't get up on the witness stand.
And here you are when this is your life that's in order. And listen, don't get me wrong, because you have a right as a defendant to choose not to testify. But I'm getting into the minds of the jury, right? When they're seeing this video of him giving these interviews and he's talking and telling his side of the story, I think they're going to wonder, why are you not doing it now?
First of all, I think we're very close to doing something that's irresponsible, perhaps reversible error. Showing him in the jail is inappropriate in my view, should never have been done. Now, having said that, he had different counsel in those days.
Right.
His lawyers were completely different. Now they're completely different. And now we have much stronger criminal defense lawyers than he had in the past. So it can go either way. I do think jurors always want to hear from the defendant, and I 99% of the time think it's wrong and foolish for the defendant to testify. But I agree with Tonya.
And the thing of it too is the defense is going to have to explain, and I think what Bruce Harvey did in one of the cross-examinations that was really great was getting Tex's story out in a bit without Tex testifying himself about the fact that he cooked for Diane and Danny Joe, the fact that he did these things that are a bit humanizing. So the defense is very skilled, and so they're going to be able to do that. And hopefully they will be able to explain it is his right not to testify. Under their discussions with him, they've decided for him not to do it.
Another question that's popping up about those lesser charges, and Tracy's asking, would he get jail time for the lesser charges? He could get some time for them. My question is, he's already served some time. Do you think he'll get additional prison time for influencing witnesses?
Well, first of all, if he is convicted of murder, there's no choice. He gets
no choice. He's done.
Now, having said that, if he is convicted of a lesser included voluntary manslaughter, that's 1 to 20. Involuntary manslaughter, reckless conduct, stupid movement, 1 to 5. The judge could decide to give him
time served,
or he could give him time served. He could give him probation. Could be a combination of all of it. And I think it's way too soon to figure it out until we know what the verdict is on the murder charge.
Without a doubt.
We can then start analyzing it.
All right, let's see. Why wouldn't he testify for himself? What else could the prosecution catch him on? Asks Kathy. So, Darrell, you say you don't like your clients to testify, right? They should never. So why not?
Because you never know how a client is going to testify. As an example, Tex McIver, when he wasn't under the wing of really seasoned criminal defense lawyers, he said all sorts of things he should never have said. He did all sorts of things he never should have done. You keep your mouth shut. KYD, BMF. Keep your big mouth shut, and he needs to do that.
Well, let me just throw this out, hypothetically. How about you just tell your client, just tell the truth? Isn't it easy to just tell the truth? Can someone who's literally telling the truth still get crossed up on the witness stand?
Without a doubt.
Let's say a criminal defendant, and this is hypothetical, let's take it out of this case just for a moment.
Okay.
A criminal defendant has been falsely accused of a crime and wants to get up and tell his story. Is there anything that can go wrong under those circumstances? And would you still not want to put your client up there if they factually, they did not do it, they are being charged for something they absolutely are 100% innocent of?
It's very difficult to put a client up. Look, if you tell the truth, you have nothing to hide. If you have nothing to hide, you hide nothing. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. Having said that, a good cross-examiner, a good prosecutor can make the truth look like a lie. That's what lawyers are. We're wordsmiths. And the better you are, the better the wordsmith you are.
So even if he's innocent, there's a chance you put him on the stand, someone like Latonia starts cross-examining him, and all of a sudden he looks more guilty than he did before he got on the stand.
But I think certain charges really require the defendant to explain it. I think when you're saying it's self-defense, how else do you get out there that it's self-defense, but you testifying what happened to you, why you were reacting? I think certain charges require you to be able to do that, right? Because that's your defense.
I'll buy that, but in this instance,
Oh, not in this instance.
He has made so many contradictory
yeah.
statements and movements that which time are you telling the truth, Tex? This time, last time, or are you telling the truth at all?
You loved your wife. I'm still about the ashes. I know. I need to stop or
we
whatever.
got an update on the ashes from yesterday, but Shay Ray saying the gun parade was over the top when they were slamming them at the end, especially.
So did she feel that they went too far?
They went too far. Too far. Alexa says Tex can't keep his mouth shut, and we all know that. All right. Let's see. So, how many more? Let's see. Tamra's asking, how many more witnesses line up? Can the state rest their case by Friday? LOL. And I think you answered your own question. They're not going to be done by Friday. I think at least both sides told the judge that they're going to need more time by the end of the week. So they kind of were debating whether to continue into next week or follow up. The way things are going now, with the pacing of some of these witnesses, I think, because we still need gun experts, right, to talk about how a gun can or can't go off. The defense is going to have that. Defense is going to have a sleep expert as well. You're going to have some cross-examination of them. So then you've got closing arguments and then jury deliberation. So we have at least, after this week, at least, I think, another week and before a verdict could possibly come down, which would be Friday the 13th.
Hoo-ha!
Before tax day.
Yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up here, I want to take a look at a few more things. Make sure we captured everything. Oh, there was an email today. This email exchange, and I'll try to do the. Oh wait, why don't we act this out?
Okay.
All right. So do you have your sheet? Oh, you need the other sheet. I'll give you a script. We're going to act out the. And Daryl.
I look forward to this.
Daryl's actually an actor, right?
I am indeed.
He is an actor. So do you want to play the role of? Do you want to play the role of Tex?
I'll be delighted.
All right. So I break that big enough. So that's Tex's part right there, and then Tex has the last line there.
Okay, perfect.
And you'll be Diane.
I'm on it.
All right. So this was. We're going to act this out for you real quick. So there was an email exchange that was part of the testimony today, and I thought it was interesting, but I don't know exactly how it's going to play. Are you guys ready?
Well, I haven't really studied the part. We haven't blocked it, but I'll do the best I can.
Okay. So go ahead.
Do you need a gun?
Only
Got a gun in the middle.
Only if it's loaded.
There we go.
I'm seriously trying to reduce my monthly expenses. Actually, debt is my biggest obstacle right now. Planning on hitting the lotto sometime this week.
Make sure you read Javier's job description. That's your next chapter in life. Save you moolah. You will be standing there in the door with your hand out when I get home every Friday.
Back to giggling.
No, gigoloing.
Gigoloing. I couldn't.
See, he's just a gigolo. So this exchange, do you think it's playful and it's fun, or do you think there's a real problem in Diane realizing that she's going to have to pay for him for the rest of his life?
I think it's Shakespeare, much ado about nothing.
Yeah, I'm not going to go and say that this is some big smoking gun. Oh, oops, maybe I shouldn't say smoking gun. But I think it's interesting. I think the same way that we just read it, it could be something that's playful, but it could be also something that sounds playful, but also is the truth.
Like a little truth in humor that, hey, you better get your act together, otherwise you're gonna have your hand out. And I think that's the way the testimony came out today, is that basically he was cash poor, minus $5,000. The only cash he was getting was from her.
And he spends a lot of money.
He was, in the 9 months before he shot and killed her, I think he was minus $63,000 in terms of how much he was bringing in and how much he was spending. His net worth was $1.7 million. He was cash poor, but assets $1.7 million. Diane, his inheritance from Diane, close to $4 million. Does that equal motive, those numbers?
I think it has to equal it for the prosecution. That's why they're going over it.
Does it?
Well, anytime that you have...
You get $4 million and no longer have to ask for a dime.
Could it be a motive? Certainly. If there had been testimony that the wife and the husband, Diane and Tex, were having problems, sure. There's been no testimony of that. As a matter of fact, all of the witnesses have testified that the marriage was a really good one. So she has more money, he has less money, my honey has money, I don't.
I don't know if it's been a testimony of really good one. I think still part of it is this. I don't feel a humanizing of Tex, and I don't feel like this loving relationship between the two. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I'm saying what's come out hasn't felt like that, and maybe that's what's going to happen with the defense.
Well, let's face it, he's not warm and fuzzy. He's not. He is a wonderful defendant for the prosecution.
Darling? Hey, Rena, we're going to have Rena that's going to get the last word here. This is great. That's exactly what he was. They both knew he was a kept man. She liked it and was the dominant partner. Does that sum up their relationship?
That's what it seems. It does.
Absolutely.
But the question is, did he get tired of it?
That's exactly. But I think that's the picture that's been painted for this jury. So prosecutors have to make the argument that somehow he was done with that type of life. He wanted a little bit of flexibility. He wanted that cash in his pocket.
He had been wanting it, and just this was his opportunity.
And the opportunity. I've got a gun in my lap. I got a couple of glasses of wine in me. Now's the time. I mean, that's the argument they got to make. We'll see whether or not it works. Thank you, folks, for watching. We do this every night at 7:30. And then again, the trial is on every morning at 9. It's streaming on my Facebook page, Vinnie Politan 11 Alive. It's on the 11 Alive YouTube page. You can watch it there. And you can also watch it on 11alive.com. Big thanks to Latonia Hines and Daryl Cohen. I will see you again tonight at 11 o'clock on the late feed, which is again on 11 Alive or 11alive.com, where we'll take some of the analysis and we're going to show you the highlights from court today in case you missed them and you want to see us put it all together for you. That's 11 o'clock on the late feed. I'll see you tomorrow morning on the stream, and here 7:30 tomorrow night for Late Feed Law.
What the money was given to him for. It started January 15th of 2012, and he made interest-only payments. It was a 3-year term originally, and the payments were $1,531 a month. And at the end of the 3 years, Diane came to me, it was January, I guess, the 15th, to say, I've re-upped the loan for another 3 years, and I've reduced his payment to $1,400 and something dollars. It wouldn't be in checkbook registers. It was a whole, I had a file for each person that had a loan out, and each month it had the amount of the payment, and then I posted the payments as they were being made. Okay. So there is a spreadsheet for that someplace.
The loan was for $350K?
Yes.
And it was how many years?
The original was 3.
Okay. And that started when?
January 15th. The payment was due on the 18th of the month, and it started in January. I think it was 2012.
And it was 3 years from that?
Yeah, it was $1,500 and some change a month. My partner is interior designer, and the condo, the second condo, when they put them together, the kitchen was torn out. It was just a big party with a bedroom. And Tex had asked us what we thought it would cost to put that condo back as a condo, if he wanted to put them on the market.
When you say put that back, you mean split them back up into 2 condos?
Right, and you have to put the kitchen back in, and put it back together.
And sell them separately?
Yes.
And this was less than 24 hours after Ms. McIver was shot?
I read it Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. It was one of those 3 nights.
That sounds like a funny question. Take a minute. Do you need a break, Mr. Brown?
I'll be all right. It's what my job does, and that's how I saw it. It was very important to me to finish.
Just take a minute, take a deep breath.
I didn't think it would be this hard. It's going to get long, okay. So that's why. It was important to me to finish her life.
Because her money was so important to them.
It wasn't.
I'm sorry, your objection.
Stop doing that. Don't argue through the questions. Save that for, if you want to get closely and negotiate with Mr. Rucker at this conference.
Did he, after showing him your documents, your spreadsheets, did he say anything about her finances?
He thought she had more money than what she had. He was surprised at the number that was in her checking accounts.
Tex started saying, girls, I wish you hadn't gotten off here. This is a bad idea. This is a bad area. You should have just stayed on 85. We continued driving down here, and this light was red. Tex asked Diane, he said, darling, would you hand me my gun?
Who actually opened the console so that the gun could come out?
Diane did. As she was looking, Tex said, it's in the bag. And so she just reached over and got it. And I'm sitting here with both of my hands on and shut the console and handed it to him.
And when you were at the red light, can you tell the jurors what happened?
Well, we were sitting at the light, and I hear click, click, click. And I looked at Diane and asked her what she was doing. She said, I'm just making sure the door's locked. And I heard a big boom, and I didn't know what it was. I thought there was an explosion somewhere. And I saw a puff of smoke, and I could see his hand. And I could see the top of the gun, I could see part of the gun, his hands, and some of the bag.
And what happened next?
She said, Tex, she shot me.
Did he say anything?
No. I thought it was a joke, and then I realized it wasn't. And then I knew that I had to get to the nearest emergency room. I asked Tex where the closest emergency room was. He said, Emery, I wanted to panic, but I knew that I couldn't. She was breathing really hard and, you know, kind of like panicky. He leaned forward and was holding her head with both hands and was saying, Diane, Diane. At one point he said, she's still breathing. I pulled in, there were some vehicles that were there in front of us, and Tex got out of the car. He had yelled for a gurney and didn't look at me, but looked past me and said, Danny Joe, I hate to see you get wrapped up in this. I've seen how these things can go down. You just need to say you came down here as a friend of the family.
When I entered the room after I had spoken to her husband, she was starting to ask questions. She asked me if she was going to die.
Was that all the questions that she asked you?
Yeah, she just asked me. She looked at me and said, am I going to die?